Hey everyone, it's Carissa. Thanks for joining me today. This month's newsletter is all about scoring big this crafty season. It is football season, but it is also crafty season, and I'm going to show you what this Scor-Buddy scoring tool can do for you. Now, this is a great tool to have in your stash. I've always used a scoreboard to create my card bases. This one's great. It has some of the most used marks lined out for you. So the standard A2 size card is marked with an asterisk. You have a gatefold card that's marked with dots. You have a brochure fold that's marked with a triangle, and then also some additional resources available on their website. Now, I wanted to show you that on the back there are some rubber feet. It also comes with its own little storage bag for travel. So if you want to travel with it, or maybe you want to put something else in there, I don't know. But it comes with that. And it also comes with its own scoring tool that locks into place. Now, I wanted to show you this locks securely into place, and to release it, you're going to just push that lever there at the top and it comes out. And then you can use it to put into the grooves and score your card projects. Now, once you're done with it, you can lock it back into place, but I'm going to tell you, I actually prefer to use a Teflon bone folder. This bone folder is a great tool to have in your stash. They are a little more expensive, but I find that when you use them to reinforce your scores or your fold lines, they don't leave a shiny finish on your cardstock. So I wanted to walk you through some of the basics of the Scor-Buddy. First, we're going to take a piece of cardstock and we're going to score it right at that asterisk to create an A2 size card base. Now, this cardstock started out at 5.5 by 8.5, and like I said, I put it into my Scor-Buddy and scored it right where that asterisk is, and then I reinforced the fold line with my Teflon bone folder, and that gave me an A2 size card base. Now that creates a horizontal card base or a side folding vertical card base, but I often like to use a top folding A2 size card. So I'm scoring this piece of cardstock at 5.5, and then I'm just going to reinforce that fold line with my bone folder. And you can see I am left with a top folding card base. Now the original cardstock on that one is cut to 4.25 by 11. And since I use that measurement so much, I'm going to actually mark it on my Scor-Buddy using a permanent pin, and I've just put a little heart at that 5.5 inch mark. Now let's create a gatefold. This is a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 inch cardstock, and I am going to score it at both of the dots. So I'm going to put my scoring tool into that groove where the dots are, and I am going to score right down this cardstock. And this is going to give me a fast and easy, no thinking gatefold card. So you can see when I fold this in, I am going to be left with this wonderful gatefold design. Now, I created a gatefold card, and you will see a picture of that in the final pictures, or you can go over to the InTouch blog, and you can either close this up with a die cut over the two gates there, or you can use a belly band, which is what I've done. Now, this piece of cardstock is cut to 5.5 inches by 11 inches, and I'm going to show you the brochure fold. So I'm just taking my scoring tool and I'm going into that groove where that triangle is, and then I'm going to rotate my cardstock around and score it again. Now, this is going to give me a brochure fold, so kind of like a trifold is what it would also be called. Now, the finished card project, if you use this type or this size of cardstock, is going to be about 3.5 by 5.5 inches, but you have that really nice brochure fold. Now, if you fold one of them in the opposite direction, you can actually create kind of a Z-fold card with this design as well. But once again, you're going to be left with a card that's 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches. So in addition to creating some really cool card folds, you can also create boxes with your Scor-Buddy. And I've created a box here that holds a gift card. But I wanted to show you how I figured out what size cardstock I needed to start with. So this area here is what I'm referring to as the base. That's the total measurements of the flat part or the top part of the box. So the first thing you need to know is how big do you want your base? And then you also need to know how deep do I want the box. So I'm measuring this out because I forgot what measurements I used. And I want the top of my box to measure 3 3/4 inches by 2 1/4 inches. Now for the depth of my box, I am going to use 1/2 inch. Because a gift card is not very deep, I don't need a lot of depth on this box, but if you wanted to include something else in there, you could make it a little deeper. Now stick with me here because we're going to do some math, and I know you thought you would never use algebra again, but we're going to use it today. So to start out, to find your starting paper size, you're going to take each dimension on your base and you're going to add 2 times the depth to each of those measurements. And then you're going to score this piece of paper at the depth. So my depth for this box is 1/2 inch. And I am going to add 2 times that amount to each one of these measurements. So this is pretty easy because 1/2 inch times 2 is 1 inch. So I'm going to add 1 inch to each of these measurements. So I'm left with a starting cardstock size of 4 3/4 by 3 1/4. And once again, I just decided how big I wanted my box, how deep I wanted my box, and then I went from there. Now, all of these instructions are written out in great detail over at the Coordinating in Touch blog post. So if you get lost along the way, don't worry, I have it all written out over there. Or you can just follow along and use the measurements that I've used today. So I'm cutting down my Essentials by Ellen patterned paper here to 4 3/4 by 3 1/4. That's what I figured I needed my starting cardstock size to be. And then I'm going to take it over to my Scor-Buddy and I'm going to score around all 4 sides at 1/2 inch. Now you can either come over 1/2 inch from that measurement on the end, but I find that that opens up more room for error for me. So I prefer to just turn my cardstock 4 times and score at the 1/2 inch mark each time. Now I'm scoring at the 1/2 inch mark because that's how deep I want my box. And you'll notice that I've actually created 2 pieces of cardstock. That's because I need a box top and a box bottom. Now I'm taking my pen here and I'm marking where those score lines meet up because these little squares here in the corner are what we're going to cut to create little tabs to hold our adhesive. So I just have those 4 little corners there, and I'm going to take and on one side, either the long side or the short side, I'm going to cut that square to where it creates a little tab. Now don't cut that tab off, just cut from the bottom of your cardstock up to the score line. And you're going to be left with these little square tabs, and those are going to hold our adhesive. So everything that I do to one side of the box, I'm doing exactly the same to the other side of the box. And once I get my little tabs created, I'm going to take my Teflon bone folder and reinforce all of those fold lines. So now it's time to assemble our box. We have our cutting done, we have our scoring done, and I'm just going to take some Be Creative tape and I'm going to add it to these little tabs that are all the way around. I'm going to add it to what would be considered the front side of the paper because I want these tabs to sit on the inside of my box, and that's going to make more sense here as I put it together. So I'm just going around and I'm adding some really strong adhesive to all 4 of those tabs. Then I'm going to remove the backer that's on that adhesive, and I am going to fold these tabs in, and I'm going to make sure that where that tab folds, so that little crease line that's there on the corner, I'm going to make sure that that meets up with the edge of the paper that I'm folding over it. So watch here, as I fold these 2 together, that little square tab is on the inside, and I'm going to make sure that those corners meet up there. That's going to give me a nice, crisp, square box edge. So I'm going to go around the entire box and I'm going to do this to where I have the base of my box. And this is going to, like I said, perfectly hold a gift card. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to add adhesive to my second piece on those same little tabs that I added it to before. And I am going to take this, and while I'm putting it together, I'm going to hold it over that base that I already created. This will just leave me with a box that's slightly larger than the base so that it's a little easier to fit over the top of the base. So you can see I'm just adhering this by assembling it around the base that I've already created. And I'm adhering it in the exact same way. I'm folding those tabs on the inside and making sure that my corners match up. And this leaves me with the perfect little box to hold a gift card, which is perfect for the holiday season or birthdays year-round. And you can see I recreated this entire box using some Essentials by Ellen embossed wood grain paper in the craft cardstock, and I embellished it with some of the new products from the September release from the Essentials by Ellen line, and I think this is an adorable project that you can create with your Scor-Buddy. So now that we've created a box, let's create a bag. Now I'm flipping through some 6x6 pattern papers here because this bag actually starts out with a cardstock or paper size measuring 6 inches by 6 inches. Now I actually ended up using the same embossed wood grain cardstock, but I love this because I can use my 6x6 pattern paper pads to create this bag. Now I'm starting out with 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 6 inches by 6 inches. Because these have a wood grain that runs in a certain direction, I am going to mark what I'm going to consider the top of my cardstock so that I can make sure that my wood grain is running in the same direction on both sides of my bag. So I'm going to start by scoring this at 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to move over 2 inches from that measurement, and I'm going to score at 2.5 inches. So just 2 inches over, and I'm going to score at 2.5. I'm going to repeat this process on both pieces of my cardstock. Now that I have this scored, I have my tab here. This is my depth area, and this is going to be the face of my box. I'm going to turn this 90 degrees, and I'm going to score at 1 inch. That's half of the depth of my bag. And by the way, I do have the instructions for figuring out what size cardstock you need to create a custom size bag. This one creates a bag that's about 5.5 inches tall by about 3.5 inches wide and 2 inches deep. Now, because I want my bag to have a pleat, I'm going to actually score halfway in between that depth, but I'm not going to go all the way down my bag here. So I'm just scoring at 1.5 inches there, and I'm not going all the way down to that bottom score line. So you can see I have both of my pieces of cardstock scored here, and I am just kind of going over those lines and kind of reinforcing them. By the way, when you are scoring things, you want to make sure that the bump is on the inside of your project. So you want to score on the right side of your project. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to create flaps. So I'm cutting up from the bottom edge just to where those score lines meet. And then this little flap here on the corner, while we needed it for our little box, it would be the equivalent of that on the box. We don't need it for our bag, so we're just going to cut that off completely. And then this little 1/2 inch tab, which is where we're going to assemble our bag, I like to cut that into a little angle. It just makes it a little bit easier to fold inside of the bag. So I've gone ahead and made those cuts on both pieces, and before I put this bag together, I wanted to do a little die cutting and create a window on the front of this bag. So I'm just using some dies from the new September release from the Essentials by Ellen line. This is from the Concertina tag die set, and I just created a window that says no peeking. I'm adhering a piece of vellum behind that. And then below it, I cut out the words ho, ho, ho. And I'm just going to adhere a piece of black glitter cardstock behind that so that when you look through the window, you're going to see that black glitter ho, ho, ho. So once I get this all decorated, I am ready to put this together. And I am going to add some more score tape to those 1/2 inch flaps that I created along the side. And I am adding this to the right side of the cardstock or the front side of the cardstock in all of these cases because I want these to be on the inside of my project. Now the little tab that's on the bottom, I want that to fold into my project as well. So on the front side or the right side of this paper, I am going to add adhesive just to that smaller flap that's along the bottom. And then I'm going to show you how easy it is to put this bag together. I am going to go ahead and remove the backer tape from just one side of that little flap there along the side. I don't want to do both at the same time because I want to make sure that I get this lined up. And I'm going to take the one piece there, I'm going to line it up to where it adheres to that flap. I'm going to make sure that my crease line and the end of my cardstock kind of match up to create a really nice, crisp, clean corner, and then I'm going to push it all together. Now I went ahead and reinforced that seal there between that flap and the other side of my bag using my bone folder. And now I'm going to remove the adhesive backer from the other tab that's on the side of my bag. I'm going to line those edges up again just by folding the bag over on itself. And now I have kind of the beginning of my bag here, and I'm just making sure everything's lined up so that my corners are nice and crisp looking. And you can see those little partial score lines I created there, those are creating the pleats on the side of the bag that I just pushed in. So let's seal up the bottom of this bag. I have that adhesive on the smaller tabs along the bottom of this bag. I'm just going to remove that. I'm going to fold those into the bag because I want them to sit on the inside of the bag. And then I'm going to fold the larger flaps over them so that it seals up the bottom of my bag. And once again, I'm just making sure all those corners kind of meet up. I'm kind of pushing and making sure everything's kind of squared up. And then I'm going to use my bone folder to kind of push those flaps down on the inside and make sure it's all sealed up. And you can see those partial score lines there are what I created along the side to create the little gussets of my bag. Now I finished kind of adorning all of these projects with some of the products from the September release from the Essentials by Ellen line. So I'm just giving you a look at all of the projects that I created today using my Scor-Buddy scoring tool. I also really like to use these scoring tools to create little score lines on a clean and simple card. So you can create a frame with score lines or just 3 simple score lines along the bottom of your card front. It really adds a lot of depth and texture to your card projects. And this is just a look at the gatefold card that I created with the belly band to hold it closed. And then finally, we have this great gift bag that I created. As I mentioned before, I will have instructions on how to create all of these projects over on the InTouch blog, as well as how to figure out how to make your own custom size bag. So be sure you join me over there because I'll also have a complete list of supplies, more still shots, and more information for you. All of these supplies are available for purchase at ellenhudson.com. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed these projects as we score big during the crafty season. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.